first poem I'd like to work with is by a poet that I don't think that you'll encounter on an AP exam, but you very well might encounter like within your courses. Her name is Sappho. She is an ancient Greek poetess. She was made famous really for some of the emotional and kind of the erotic poetry that she delivered to her audience. This one's very simple. It's easy to memorize, and I've seen it formatted in lots of different ways. I'm going to put it on the screen, and understand that this translation, this formatting, was a choice that I made to do because I think it emphasizes maybe the point that I'm seeing within the poem. The poem goes quite simply: pain penetrates me, drop by drop. Now, poetry can be very simplistic in some ways that can kind of fool us a little bit. But in many ways, the simplicity of poetry, all poetry is built on simplicity. Even if you're working with the T.S. Eliot, as sometimes he can cover up and confuse us or obfuscate us into meanings, but when we cut right down to it, it's really about language. It's really about the words the poet's using, the words that they're choosing to use to get across an emotion, a feeling, an experience, an idea that they themselves are encountering, and they feel a need to express that through written language or through song. And so Sappho is no different than that. So if I'm approaching this poem, as simple as it may look, and there, you'll see it up on the screen again, pain penetrates me drop by drop. I start with the first word because sometimes when you're looking at a line of poetry or even when you're looking at an entire poem, you're looking for the words within that poem that are standing out to you. And I think the big word that connects me as a reader, me as a thinker, me as a human being to this poem is the word pain. It's a word that many of us understand, but at different levels. So let's dig a little bit deeper with this poem. I'm going to take you through some of those terms that we talked about before, and then we'll see what we can do with this poem as we kind of work our way through it. And as we begin to take a closer look at this poem, what we see in this offering by Sappho is not only the balance between the sounds, the P sounds and the D sounds, as we talked about with that fulcrum of the me, but let's look a little closer at the word choice. Technically, we'll call this diction, but you can look, and what we've got is a series of words, all monosyllabic, one syllable: pain, drops by drop, and me, with the only distinction being penetrates, which is a three-syllable word. So that three-syllable word begins to kind of stand out just a little bit. So we want to look at that as an effective word choice, rather than just saying pain gets to me or pain hurts. She's using this multi-syllable word that's going to help us kind of springboard into the idea and get into it just a little bit deeper. So again, as we look at the word choice, she chooses words like pain rather than hurt. She chooses drop rather than fall, or water, or anything that could be, like the image, but the drop by drop. I think it's the sound that she's choosing that's most effective there. Another word to look at that would be something you could talk about closely would be the word me. Notice that she doesn't use the word pain penetrates us, pain penetrates you. She says me. So she's included in that, and she's personalized it. She's drawn you as a reader into the text, which is a very effective way to do things in poetry. So keep at it. This is, again, a pretty simple poem, but as we go a little bit further in the series, you'll see it gets a little bit deeper and deeper, and we can talk a little more complexly about things like word choice, balance within the poem, order of the poem, and how it's looked at. As we kind of go forward, you'll see that I provide copies of the poems. I offer a reading of the poem, and then we'll continue to kind of look at it. How do we begin to take pieces of it apart and shape and make meaning for it? Something that we can write about, something that we can talk about, something that we can latch onto in our studies. So as small as this poem is, there's a lot going on with it. So we talked about, let's hear it again. Pain penetrates me, drop by drop. Now, because of the way I've formatted the poem, because I've decided to put it into 4 lines rather than one single line, which is probably how it first appeared, I think what I've done by doing that is created a pause for you as a reader, and that pause is technically referred to as a caesura. And musicians will kind of understand this idea. Sometimes big impact can occur by what's not there. And sometimes it's in those silences that we begin to kind of find ourselves actually latching on to something, creating a better understanding between us as a reader and the poem or the piece of literature that we're looking at. So those pauses are necessary. If we think about like the process of reading in general, one of the things that makes reading work, particularly close reading, is it's highly tied to cognitive thinking. What reading allows us to do more so than just watching videos, and that's why we're including a lot of text in what we do, is that reading, our brain has to slow itself down because the process of reading is not quick. Okay, it's not a natural thing at all to the human species. It's something we've taken and developed, and evolution has kind of trained us to do this task that isn't natural to us. We don't come out as readers. It's something we have to wire our brain to be able to do. But the use of pausing by a poet is a point of emphasis. That's another one of our terms that I want you to be familiar with. So he's using this pause as caesura, or she is, in order to get us to stop and think and reflect and remember those points of pain, those moments of pain that we had, that were not minor things, that were lasting things, those things that maybe left scars, those things that maybe moved us from one path of life maybe into another path of life. Sometimes that's for good, sometimes that's not for good. But I think Sappho is tapping into a very human emotion here. This idea that all of us, and that word me, I talked about that as a pivot point. If you look at the balance of the poem, pain penetrates me, drop by drop. Drop by drop. We've got 3 syllables. Pain penetrates me. We've got 4 syllables. Okay, pain penetrates. And then that me. So we've got these syllable sounds. That me, we're going to look at me as this pivot point. That's the balance, or if you want, the fulcrum on that teeter-totter, okay? That's keeping this poem active. The me is a central word. Even though I talked about pain being a word that stands out, the idea of me connects me as a reader to this poet or to this persona who's speaking. And that's certainly a distinction we sometimes have to make, is the poet is the speaker the same. And I'll get to that with later poems, but I think with this one, because she's calling us as a reader to directly engage within the poem, we see that word me, and it's definitely in the center of this poem. It's pivoting, okay? So, and if we look at the sounds, pain penetrates, the alliteration there with the P sounds, and then we have drop by drop, the D sounds, and the B, which is a very close cousin to the D sound. We again have alliteration. Those alliterations are put back into balance by putting that word me in the center there. So that's a quick little lesson on how you can begin to talk about like word choice and diction, and how sometimes looking at a very simple poem, you can begin to start thinking a lot and maybe see the beauty of what Sappho is trying to create here. It's a highly personal poem, but in some ways it speaks to all of us.